Hey everybody. Okay, so we got a little further in class today than those 3 chapters, so I'm going to read to you what we read in class today as well, just because I want you guys to be able to stay with us. Okay, this is chapter 13, and it's called American Chop Suey. I used to think all that spooky stuff about Friday the 13th was just a pile of baloney, but now I'm getting my own personal introduction to what can happen. It's October, and so far things have been going pretty good. Better than I ever expected. Me and Freak are a little like this unit, and even Mrs. Donnelly says she is starting to get used to us, which is her way of admitting that Freak is about twice as smart as she is, and for sure he's read more books. She keeps saying stuff like, "Kevin, we know you know the answer because you always know the answer. So wouldn't it be nice if you let someone else answer for a chance? For instance, your friend Maxwell." Freak goes, "He knows the answer, Mrs. Donnelly." "Yes, Kevin, and I'm sure you're correct because you're always correct. But for a change, I'd really like to hear Maxwell speak for himself." "Maxwell?" This is dumb, because what does it matter if I know the answer? If I don't know, then Freak will tell me and he'll explain it in a way that I can understand, which is a lot better than Mrs. Donnelly can do. So what I do, I just shrug and smile and wait, because I know she'll get tired of asking and move on to the next. As a matter of fact, I do know the answer. The reason Johnny Tremaine got mad and hateful is because he burned his hand in a stupid accident. And I know about that because Freak has been showing me how to read a whole book, and for some reason it all makes sense. Where before, it was just a bunch of words I didn't care about. My reading skills tutor, Mr. Meehan, he says stuff like, "Max, the tests have always shown that you're not dyslexic or disabled, and this proves it. As you know, my personal opinion has always been that you're lazy and stubborn and you didn't want to learn. So if hanging out with Kevin somehow improves your attitude and skills, that's great. Keep up the good work." It was Mr. Meehan who had a word with Mrs. Donnelly, and that's why she finally gave up on trying to make me talk in class. And instead, she waits until study hall, where she asks me the same questions alone, and I tell her the answers. She still doesn't get it, though, because she always goes, "But Maxwell, if you can speak to me, then you can speak to your classmates, right?" Wrong. Big difference. I can't explain what it is, except that my mouth shuts up when there's more than 2 people, and a whole classroom full, you can forget it. Okay, you're shy about public speaking, but how does that apply to writing down the answers? If you can read, then you can write, right? Wrong again. The reading stuff Freak helped me figure out by showing how words are just voices on paper. Writing down the words is a whole different story. No matter what Freak says, writing the stuff down is not like talking. And my hand feels so huge and clumsy, it's like the pencil is a piece of spaghetti or something and it keeps slipping away. Mrs. Donnelly says okay for now. She's satisfied I can read. But we'll have to work on this writing thing, won't we, Maxwell? And when she says that, I nod and look away, because inside I'm thinking, forget it. Just no way. Like Freak says, reading is just a way of listening, and I could always listen, but writing is like talking, and that's a whole other ballgame. Anyhow, what happens first on Friday the 13th? We're in homeroom when this note comes from the principal's office. "Maxwell Kane, your presence is requested." Gulp. So Freak and I go up to the teacher, and she says, "No, Kevin, you have to stay here. Mrs. Addison was very specific. Maxwell is to go alone." Freak starts to smart-mouth her, then changes his mind and nudges me and whispers, "Just give him name, rank, and serial number. Deny everything. If you aren't back by 1000 hours, we'll organize a search and rescue mission." He offers to lend me his dictionary in case I want to try out any big words on Mrs. Addison, but I'm already so worried about being called in alone, all I can think is that they're going to put me back in the learning disabled class. I've already decided I'll run away if they do that. I'll just go live in the woods somewhere and jump out and scare people. Anyhow, I don't take Freak's dictionary along because my hands are trembly and I might drop it. Or Mrs. Addison might ask me a word and I'll forget how to look it up and prove I am still a butthead goon. But Mrs. Addison is waiting outside her office, like she always does, and she's trying to smile, but she's not really a smiling kind of person, and I can tell this is serious, whatever it is. like maybe somebody died. I go, Graham, is Graham okay? Yes, everybody is fine. Come in and sit down, Maxwell, and please try to relax. Yeah, right. Mrs. Addison is sitting there in a big chair, and she's looking up at the ceiling and then at the floor and at her hands, and finally she gets around to looking at me. This is rather difficult, Max. I don't know where to begin. First, let me say we're all very pleased with your progress. It's nothing short of miraculous. It almost convinces me that you have known how to read at your level all along, and were for some reason keeping it a secret. I'm not really hearing what she's saying because there's like this little bird fluttering around in my chest, and it makes me blurt out, You're putting me back in LD, right? Mrs. Addison comes over and pats me on the shoulder. I can tell it makes her nervous to touch me, but she does it anyway, and she goes, No, nothing like that. That has nothing to do with school, Max. This is a personal situation. Because if I have to go back to LD class, I won't. I just won't. I'll run away. I will. Max, this is not about your classwork or even about school. This is about your father. My father. Which makes me wish all of a sudden I had done something wrong and Mrs. Addison was just giving me detention. She takes a deep breath and folds her hands together like she's praying, and she says, A request has been forwarded to me from the parole board. A request from your father. Maxwell, your father wants to know if... I don't want to hear it. I jump up and cover my ears, holding my hands real tight. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Don't. Please don't say it. What happens when you go nuts in the principal's office is she calls the school nurse, and the two of them are trying to hug me and calm me down, and it's like I'm back in daycare or something. Maxwell, Mrs. Addison is saying. She's trying to pry my hands away from my ears. Maxwell, please forget about it, okay? Forget I said anything. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, and I'll make sure of that. I promise. I swear on my honor, he cannot make you do anything you don't want to do. I'm going to make that very clear to the parole board. And his lawyer, very clear indeed. Maxwell, please listen. Finally, I take my hands off my ears, which wasn't really working anyway because I could still hear everything they said. And big surprise, I'm sitting in the corner of the room, down on the floor, with my knees all hunched up, and I don't even remember how I got there. It's like I blanked out or something, and the nurse is giving me this cup of water, and the weird thing is, she's crying. I'm so sorry, I say. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't, she says. I cry easy. Don't you worry about me. I do worry about it, though, because if she's crying, I must have hit her, and I don't remember it, which, if you think about it, is really scary. Who knows what I might do and then not remember? The worst thing happens later in the cafeteria. Freak has this thing about American chop suey. He loves the stuff. The gooier, the better. You'd never believe a person so small could eat so much. And when he holds up his plate, he always says, Please, sir, more gruel. And I always say, It's American chop suey, not gruel. I looked up gruel, remember? And he always goes, I beg of you, sir, more gruel. And so I finally go up and get him another helping. When I come back, something is wrong. Freak's face is all red and swollen up, and he's making this strange sound. He can't talk. All he can do is look at me and try to say something with his eyes, and then I'm running to get the nurse. Quick, he can't breathe. Then she's running as fast as me, and she's yelling for someone to call an ambulance. Back in the cafeteria, Freak has turned purple. The nurse grabs him, and she's got this plastic thing she shoves into his mouth, and his eyes are closed up tight, and one of his legs is kicking. I don't know what to do, so I start hopping up and down in one place, and when the kids keep crowding around, I push them back. And the next thing, Freak's face is starting to look pink instead of purple, and he's breathing again. Right about then, the ambulance comes. I never even heard the siren, and Freak is trying to talk in this croaky voice as they put him on the stretcher. I'm okay, he keeps saying. Really, I'm okay. I just want to go home. The deal is, once they call the ambulance, you have to go to the hospital and get checked out. That's a rule. I keep trying to get into the back of the ambulance with him, but they won't let me. Finally, Mrs. Addison has to come out and pull me away until the ambulance leaves with just the light going and no siren. "You've had quite a day, haven't you, Maxwell?" she said as she's walking me back to school. "It's not me who had quite a day," I say. "Kevin is the one. All he did was try to eat his lunch." Mrs. Addison gives me this look, and then she goes, "You're going to be okay, Maxwell Kane. I'm sure of it now." She's okay for a principal, but for some reason I still can't make her understand it's not me who had a bad Friday the 13th. And I swear on the dictionary, if Freak ever tries to eat American chop suey again, I'll dump it on his head. Chapter 14, Cross My Heart and Hope to Die. Graham lets me stay home the next day because Freak is getting out of the hospital, and I'm right there on the front step when the fair Gwen pulls up in her car. Freak is riding in the back. You can barely see him in the window, and he's got this big grin that makes me feel like everything is going to be okay. I go, "Is it okay if I carry him inside?" And the fair Gwen says, "Of course." "He has to rest," she says. "He stays in the house until I say different. Is that understood?" In his room, Freak right away is ordering me around. Bring me this and go do that, and you'd never guess he'd been sick. "A minor incident," he says, easily corrected by biogenic intervention. "You mean that robot stuff?" Freak goes, "Shh." The fair Gwen must not know of the plan. The very idea strikes fear in her heart. "Well, it is pretty scary," I say. "Getting an operation to give you a whole new body?" "I'm not scared," Freak says. "I'm looking forward to it." "So when does it happen?" Freak gets this faraway look and says, "I'm not sure. Dr. Spivak, she's my doctor, she says maybe a year or two. But how come you need a new body?" I ask. "How come you can't just stay like you are?" Freak shakes his head like he knows I'm not smart enough to understand. "No one stays like they are," he says. "Everybody is always changing. My problem is I'm growing on the inside, but not the outside." He doesn't want to talk about it anymore, which is fine with me. And in another couple of days, everything is back to normal, and we're going to school like always. And everything is really good until Christmas vacation, when, if you'll excuse the expression, all hell breaks loose. I'm in the Down Under trying to get the stupid wrapping paper to cover the stupid presents I got for Graham and Grim, when the shouting starts upstairs. Understand, Grim never yells at Graham. Not that I can ever remember. And Graham, well, the worst thing she does is cry when she's mad. But somebody sure is yelling up there. So I sneak up the stairs, and I don't even have to put my ear to the door. That's how loud it was. "Over my dead body, you will." That's Graham yelling, and her voice is big and full of tears. Grim's voice isn't nearly as loud, and I open the door a crack to hear whatever it is that's made Graham so mad at him. "I have an obligation," he's saying. "A man has to protect his family." "Not with a gun," Graham yells. "Not in this house. I won't have it. Oh, I can't stand it. How could they do this to us?" "He fooled him," Grim is saying. "Just like he fooled Annie. Just like he fooled us once upon a time. Never again, though. That man tries to set foot in this house, I aim to shoot him." "No guns," Graham says. "You don't know anything about guns." "Of course I do. I was in the Army. That was 30 years ago. I know what will happen. Don't you think I've dreamt about it for the last 8 years? He'll come in here and he'll take that gun away from you, and then he'll be the one shooting." By now I figured out who they're talking about, and I guess you have too. None other than him, Killer Kane, my father. "Maybe they won't let him out," Graham is saying. "If they do, they'll give us protection." "Sure they will," Grim says, "just like they protected our Annie." Next thing, Graham is crying, and you can tell Grim is trying to make her feel better, going, there, dear, I know." A while later, I hear the cellar stairs creaking. It's Grim. He knocks on my door. "Come in." Grim comes inside, and for once he doesn't tell me what a rat hole I'm living in or how it smells like a locker room because I forgot to put my socks in the hamper. He sits on the edge of the bed and folds his hands together. I never think about how old he is because he never acts old. But tonight he's all white and bent and his skin is saggy. He's about 1,000 years old, and he says, I guess you heard the ruckus. Your grandma gets so upset, bless her heart. Can't abide the idea of violence. Can't say I blame her. Did he escape? I ask. Grim shakes his head. He's up for parole. That's dumb. That is so dumb. Grim goes, you hit the nail on the head there, son. What I did do, just so you know, I went to the court and made it so he won't be allowed within a mile of this house. If he does try to come here, they'll send him back to prison. The judge promised me that much. I say, maybe you should get a gun. Grim doesn't say anything for a while, and then he says, maybe I will. I can't tell your grandma about it, though, and it breaks my heart to lie to her. That's one thing we've never done. I won't tell, I say. Grim is quiet, and then he stands up from my bed. In this real old, tired voice, he says, everything's going to be okay, Max. I'll make sure of it. But for the next few days, I want you to stay in the house. Promise me you'll do that. Cross my heart and hope to die, I say. Chapter 15. What came down the chimney. Christmas Eve is real quiet. Like Freak says. Like Freak says, you could hear a mouse fart, which, even if it is a stupid joke, makes Grim smile and shake his head. Freak and the Fair Gwen have supper with us, and we're all trying to pretend like everything is normal. And everybody says a word, and nobody says a word about Killer Kane getting out of prison. The Fair Gwen is wearing this dark red silky blouse and a long black skirt that almost touches the floor. And her waist is so small, she looks like one of those Christmas ornaments. The kind that makes a tingle bell sound when the branches move. Freak is all dressed up too. He's wearing this tweedy new suit jacket and it has patches on the elbows. And Grim says all he needs is a pipe and he'll look like quite the professor. No tobacco, Freak says. Nicotine is a toxic waste of time. Just the pipe, Grim insists. You don't have to smoke it. Don't get him started on bad habits, Graham says. Maxwell, please pass the mint sauce. Mint sauce is one of Graham's specialties. And you'd be amazed how it improves everything, which is why I've been keeping it close by. Anyhow, the food is the best. You can't beat Graham on Christmas or Thanksgiving, and we all eat until we're fit to bust, except the Fair Gwen makes sure Freak doesn't eat too fast. You'd think I was starving him, the Fair Gwen says. Please, sir, more gruel, he says, holding up his plate and making a funny face where his tongue sticks out sideways. And Graham laughs so hard, she has a coughing fit, which makes us all shut up. After supper, we sit around like you do, admiring the tree and talking about how lucky we are not to be homeless. And Grim starts telling these old stories about when he was a kid and they got lumps of coal. They got lumps of coal in their stockings. If we were lucky, we got an apple core, he says, or a few orange rinds. Now, Arthur, Graham says, you never got a lump of coal in your life. You're right. We never even got a lump of coal. Can you imagine? My father couldn't afford coal, so he'd write the word coal on a piece of paper and put it in our stockings, and we'd pretend we got a lump of coal. That's how poor we were. The Fair Gwen is laughing to herself and shaking her head. Graham says, how can you tell such lies on Christmas Eve? I'm telling tales, dear, not lies. Lies are mean things, and tales are meant to entertain. And so we all sit there acting polite and listening to Grim make stuff up that no one in a million years would believe. And all of us have a cup of hot chocolate and a piece of Russell Stover candy right out of the box. And then it's time to pass out a few presents. Graham has this rule that you can open one present Christmas Eve and the rest on Christmas Day, which can be tough, deciding what to open first. Grim always starts it off because, like he says, he's really a kid at heart and he can't stand to wait. From Graham, he gets this woolly sweater that buttons up the front, and he acts surprised, even though he's got about 100 just like it already. Then Graham opens her present from me, which is a bracelet made of shells from beaches around the world, and she right away puts it on and says it's just what she wanted, which is so like Graham. If you give her an old beer can, she'd act pleased and say it was just what she wanted. Then Freak opens his present for me, and even before he gets the paper all the way off, he gives me this thumbs up and says, cool. It's a gizmo that looks like a jackknife, but it's a whole bunch of little screwdrivers and wrenches and even a little magnifying glass. I'm pretty sure Freak can invent stuff with it if he feels like it. Graham gives the Fair Gwen this scarf that just happens to match her blouse. And everybody goes, ooh and ah. And I finally decide what present to open. Right away, you'd know it was something Freak did, because the box isn't square. It's pointed on top like a pyramid, and instead of regular wrapping paper, he has Sunday comics taped all over it, and it's driving me nuts trying to figure out what would fit inside a pyramid-shaped box. Freak seems like he's just as excited as me, even though he already knows what he put inside. Take off all the paper first, he says. There's a special way to open it. Real careful, I peel off all the paper. And the thing is, it's not a pyramid-shaped box he bought somewhere. He made it. You can see where he cut out the pieces of cardboard and taped them all together. And he wrote on the sides of the pyramid these little signs and arrows. Follow the arrows, he says. The arrows point all over the place, and I have to keep turning the pyramid around until finally I get to this sign that says, press here and be amazed. Go on, Freak says. It's not an explosive device, silly. It won't blow up. I press the spot on the pyramid, and all of a sudden, all four sides fold down at the same time, and I'm looking inside the pyramid, and just like Freak promised, I'm amazed. This young man is a genius, Grim is saying, and I don't use that word lightly. Grim is right about that, because Freak has the whole thing rigged with these elastic bands and paper clips, which is what made the sides unfold all at the same time. And inside the little platform and on the platform is a book. Not a normal book like you buy in the store, but a book he made himself. You can tell right away. It looks so special, I'm afraid to pick it up or I might ruin it. What I did was take all of my favorite words, Freak says, and put them in alphabetical order. Like a dictionary? Exactly, Freak says, but different because this is my dictionary. Go on and look inside. I open up the book, and the way he asks and the way the pages smell just like a ballpoint pen, it starts with A, just like a regular dictionary, but Freak said it was different. You don't have to read it all tonight, Freak says. Save some for tomorrow. I gotta tell you, though, you're gonna flip when you see what I did with the Z's. This is the best. Getting Freak's dictionary. Everything else is extra. I figure it will take forever to fall asleep because my head is full of stuff. Grim and his written down lump of coal, the pyramid with the special book inside, and how fat, wet flakes of snow are falling when the fair Gwen towed Freak home in his American Flyer wagon. On the way home, he was pretending to be the boss by saying, "On Donner, on Dasher, on Guinevere," and she was telling him to shut up or she'll leave him outside until he turns into a snowman. Which must be why I'm dreaming about a little snowman that looks like Freak. The snowman keeps saying, "Cool, cool." And when I wake up, I feel the cold coming into my bedroom, which is weird because it's always warm in the down under with the furnace right next door. I think I hear the wind right there in the room, except it's not the wind. Someone's breathing. Someone who rises up darker than night, as big as the room, and puts a giant hand on my face and presses down. "Don't say a word, boy," he whispers. Not one sound. I try to move, try to shrink myself back into the bed, but the hand follows me down. The hand is so hard and strong, I can't move, and it feels like my heart has stopped beating, waiting to see what will happen next. "I came back," he says, just like I promised.